Good morning and thank you for joining me, Freedom Lemwa, on the Travel Show. Did you know that in Africa, we make more money from local tourism? Well, according to the World Travel Council, Africa makes 56% of its tourism revenue from local tourism, compared to the 44% that foreigners bring into Africa. Unfortunately, African adverts are targeted at foreigners. But we are seeing a lot of tourism growth, especially domestic growth, across African countries. Countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Cote d'Ivoire as well. And in these countries, they are among the 40 countries that e-commerce platform Jumia conducted a research on to see how domestic tourism is doing. And so I spoke to the Group Communication and Public Relations Officer, Abdisalam Benzitui, and this is what he had to say.
Domestic tourism is already a reality. People are traveling more and more across their country and in the continent as well. For instance, in Kenya, where I live, the domestic tourism has been a key growth driver of the industry in the recent year. Almost, I think, last year, the domestic tourism increased by like 30 to 40%. And this is very interesting to know. The volume spent by the local travelers in Africa is higher than the international tourists, even if the local travelers spend per person is often lower.
And I also wanted to know, what is leading to this growth? And so I asked.
For instance, in Kenya, if you check the domestic tourism mostly, is growing because we have different factors. We have the middle class who has aspiration to travel more. We have better access to the travel informations, thanks to the boom of smartphones. Internet and social media are becoming the main source of information. Travel is becoming more and more affordable, thanks to online services, like, for instance, OTAs like Jumia Travel. Like if you see in our report, drop of the room price by night by 40%. We have also growing bed capacity in the continent, and also development of low-cost airlines. Some countries also, like Morocco, South Africa or Ivory Coast, are also trying to attract more and more business travelers, for instance, from the continent through MIC, like meetings, conferencing, and exhibitions.
It is interesting that in spite lack of initiatives to promote local tourism, we're seeing more growth. So what can African countries, government and organizations do to further promote domestic tourism? And this is what he had to say.
I think it's a good example. Kenya, they did a lot in terms of tax, airport tax, for instance. The airport tax are very low. And when you have airport tax very low, you encourage the low costs. So you have different companies now, airlines company in Kenya who are doing domestic routes in Kenya. West Africa mostly, like Ivory Coast, you have Air Cote d'Ivoire, but the prices are very, very, very expensive. The airport tax are very, very, very high, and the infrastructure sometimes are very bad. So how can you improve the domestic tourism and encourage the local tourism to travel within the countries if the infrastructures are not there, if the airport tax are high? Because if you want to attract international tourists, you have also to have this domestic residents traveling inside the countries.
With over 1.1 billion Africans expected to join the middle class segment by 2050, African governments need to invest in infrastructure. They need to reduce their taxes at airports and make flights cheaper, among other things, for domestic growth to grow. In a survey that we conducted of our viewers, we wanted to know what you think of domestic tourism. And 69% of our viewers said that they have traveled locally, while 31% say they have not enjoyed a holiday in their own country. But if given an opportunity, 62% said that they would pick a trip abroad, compared to the 38% that said they would still travel locally. And I think that's food for thought. Thank you for joining me on this travel segment. Be sure to hit me up on Twitter @FMLemo for any travel news that you might want to share and to talk more on this.